Good day and welcome to Conversations with AARP in the Virgin Islands. I'm Troy A. Deshabert-Schuster, the State Director of AARP in this territory. And once again, we are discussing very important information. And in particular now, as we have begun hurricane season, we will be discussing hurricane and other disaster preparedness. Following the September 1989 disaster of Hurricane Hugo and subsequent natural disasters such as Irma and Maria, the Virgin Islands has focused on improving its disaster response capabilities. One resource that has been leading the change in the Virgin Islands is the Virgin Islands Emergency Management Agency, otherwise known as VITEMA. Simply put, Virgin Islanders are becoming better prepared because of the efforts of VITEMA. Despite the positive change in the culture of preparedness, there are still gaps in emergency planning that exists, especially for older adults. Studies reveal that although preparedness guidelines and resources exist for older adults, at least 2/3 of adults aged 50 and older had no emergency plan in place for themselves and had never participated in any disaster preparedness educational program and were not aware of the availability of relevant resources. Consequently, AARP in the Virgin Islands has teamed up with VITEMA in advocating for a coalition to build and sustain community resilience in response to any disaster or emergency for people of all ages. And so today we're pleased to welcome, Daryl Jaschen, the Director of VITEMA.
Good morning, Troy. Good morning. Doing great. Thank you for the opportunity to come back on the show and have a good conversation going into hurricane season 2021. It is here.
Yeah, and just prior to the show, we were reminiscing that this is our 1-year anniversary of Conversations with AARP in the Virgin Islands. You were our first guest a year ago, and now here you are with us in our anniversary 1 year later, again at the beginning of hurricane season. So we're happy to have you with us to discuss this issue, which affects all of us here in the Virgin Islands and in the entire Caribbean. So how important is it to have resources in place to prepare in advance of an emergency, such as hurricanes or other natural disasters? You could even speak to other disasters such as tsunamis, et cetera.
Yes, Troy, it's been quite a year already. Even with La Sophia eruption on Mount St. Vincent, we had to think about what would happen with the winds had changed and shifted. And Barbados was hit by the ash that came out of St. Vincent, La Sophia. So those are things we looked at as a cabinet and we're prepared to have conversations with. But just on the hurricane front, I look at each year, I go back and look at 4 major events to the territory. I look at 1989 Hurricane Hugo, you mentioned, which impacted the island of St. Croix, Category 5. I look at Hurricane Maryland in 95, impacted the island of St. Thomas as a Category 2. And I look at Irma and Maria. Obviously, most of us were living through that and understand the impact upon us. So those are very important for me to understand and look at those lessons, both as a territory and as our federal partners. Again, we work with FEMA and a lot of national partners. But to answer the question, what's changed in going into 2021, the resources that are available, this really goes back to a community, goes back to resiliency, realizing we don't have a lot of warehouses in the territory to store food. Most of the food products come to us by ship, and it takes a while to get here. We're used to the high season of hurricanes in August, September, October, the food shelves going down. So you just have to think now in the month of June, and we're in the mid-month of June. We started back in May. We had Hurricane Awareness Week. Governor Bryan signed the proclamation, and we started the outreach program. So really, it goes back to 3 things. One, developing a plan about what you as an individual or a family are going to do in preparation for an event. And we'll call it a hurricane because that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Where are you going to go? Who are you going to communicate? What documents do you need to have with you? Having that comfort that you are prepared. And then the second part is having a kit that's customized to you. If you've not had a chance to be with VITEMA for any outreach, you can go to the VITEMA website, the vitema.vi.gov. We can download checklists for the earthquakes, tsunamis, different from hurricanes, different from other activities. But ultimately, you have to be comfortable with having a kit, and a kit goes back to sort of what you need to have in your house if you're going to stay. or if you're going to travel somewhere, how much can you take with you to go to somewhere in order to be safe? And then the third thing is what we call vigilance. It's just being aware of what's happening in the community, what's happening in the surroundings. So when VITEMA puts out the alerts, the messages I get on radio stations, I put out the information that you are able to take action. One of the things I worry about is, as we go through, I'll use the word fatigue, during the hurricane season, especially August, September, we may get 3 or 4 or 5 waves that will come off of Africa that will threaten the territory. And, the first couple may be no impact, but then all of a sudden one may be impact. Hurricane Maryland, for example, the week before that, there was a big to-do about something was coming that came to be nothing. So all of a sudden, the VITEMA gets excited and says, okay, be prepared. And people, oh, we just went through that last week. But, every time information we get, we want to share that. And that's what technology has gotten better and better. National Weather Service is a resource we go to. There's no magic behind it. Look at science. We look at the modeling. Modeling is getting better and better every year. The earlier we can detect storms coming off of Africa or late season coming the opposite direction, we look both directions, the better we can communicate to you. If you're going to open up shelters, we're going to do it at least 2 days ahead of time so you can make, plans to go to those shelters. But really those 3 things, having a plan, having a kit that's customized to you, and remaining vigilant. And part of that vigilance is signing up for AARP-VI, or if you're elderly over age 60, we can sign you up. And we'll talk about a little bit later, the registry for seniors, Department of Human Services can customize the outreach for you for coordination. So those 3 things we can talk a lot about, but that's the resources you need to have in front of you, and talk about that now, even to the point where you take a printout or you write on your refrigerator, each month what you want to get to build that kit, because it can get expensive. You want to go back, look at your old water, your old sardines, your old Spam, make sure it's not expired. So those things that, I had it 10 years ago, no, it's not going to be good, but you want to be comfortable that you are prepared to go through. I always talk about, how long should you be prepared to be on your own in a sense of sustenance, in a sense of a support. And, I say 10 days. And that's a lot to say, and that's really a lot for someone to go 10 days. That's, but ultimately, we talk about Water Power Authority, with the power going down, the telephone poles going down. Hopefully, the composite poles now that we have, only 40% of those are distributed. So you still have a lot of wooden poles out. Those will go down. Telecommunications will go down. The roads will be impassable. So it takes time, and we don't have a lot of resources in the territory, but we do have a lot of partners that will come to support us. So, being able to be on your own and be with family with them for 10 days until we can get food and water distribution going, until we get the medical supplies going, until we can get the patient evacuation going. It's all about saving lives and protecting property are our priorities, from an event coming up.
Talking about power lines going down after a hurricane, has there ever been any discussion within the governor's cabinet about cutting down trees that are around these poles or even right under the wires? Like, for instance, going down Queen Mary Highway here in St. Croix going toward Frederickstead, you see all of these huge mahogany trees right below the power lines. A lot of those branches pulled down the lines. The trees were kind of trimmed back, but the trees are still right there under the power lines. Is there any discussion about cutting these trees back so they don't continue to pose a threat to power lines?
We had a lot of conversation with FEMA, actually, because it goes back to funding this, because after Irma and Maria, there were a lot of, trees that were down, partially down, and we went through a lot of definitions and scopes, environmental, aspect of the trees. And we really looked at a lot of money being spent to protect them and cut them down to a certain point. But then, of course, mahoganies, as you know, are protected trees. So you have to balance that out. And if it's on a Water Power Authority line, that's Water Power Authority responsibility. And they do have contractors that are out and about. We also have Department of Public Works with the guts, the other piece of the guts, making sure those are clean. But that's a concerted effort. But we have to balance that out with the, protecting the trees and the nature as well as protecting the lines. The other thing is, individual generators, once they do start generators, we're very concerned about that power being energized back in that line and the safety impact. So a lot of conversations we have with Water Power Authority on protecting the line. The other piece is we typically like to cut the lines and cut the WAPA poles to open up the routes. But we found out, Irma Maria, a lot of the fiber optics telecommunications lines are connected to those same poles. So while it's not an energized power line, it is still an active fiber optic line that looks just like a normal little telephone line. But when you cut it out, you lose, communications. We're trying to restore it, and that's a big challenge. So, a lot of conversations happen about the safety and protection of that, and the interagency between Water Power Authority, Department of Public Works, VITEMA, to go about and make those protective measures.
And what kind of preparedness has VITEMA and the other governmental agencies done? Like, do you have special equipment on island? Do you have special equipment on standby in the case of a hurricane? What kind of concrete preparations have been made?
The two critical ones I'll talk about is emergency power and telecommunications. And those, from the government perspective to respond, the power piece is the first one. One, we had to identify our critical infrastructure. So I have about 50 sites identified throughout the district that are considered critical infrastructure, either whether it's fire stations, hospitals, emergency operations centers, 911 centers, to make sure those are identified to be supported by generators. And we were able to purchase this last year with Governor Bryan, with the CARES Act funding, 10 emergency generators and 100 kilowatts are owned by VITEMA, the Territorial. No one has to tell us besides us where we want to put them. And we put 4 on St. Croix, 4 on St. Thomas, and 2 on St. John. And that's very important, primarily for our shelters. If we open the shelters up, as you know, you have to have emergency power. But then after the storm, to make the assessment to find out where we can put those generators to support that, plus refuel those and maintain those. So those are under VITEMA's control. And based upon the prioritization, we'll do that. Plus, FEMA is bringing in additional generators to have available to us. And that was something new after Irma Maria. Lessons learned was, we cannot rely upon Puerto Rico to get generators here, even though it's just 60 miles away, but with the supply line going down. So they're bringing generators in both for St. Croix and the St. Thomas districts. However, not to be used until after the storm. And then it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 days to put about 3 generators up in the whole challenge Army Corps of Engineers. So we've done make some tremendous strides on emergency power. And plus, talk to Water Power Authority. They have some new generators have come in to get the water distribution going and generation for that. And on the telecommunications, I always talk about what's called PACE, the P, the A, the C, and the E. Those are primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. So after a large, hurricane, we're back down to the E, which really goes back to my amateur radio operators, getting them, and we have a great relationship with them. We have in our 3 EOCs in St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John, a whole nother series of communications in order for us to communicate, to do assessments, prioritization, develop leadership, decision making. And we have, satellite phones also set up for the cabinet. I have 30 of those. I do have the ability with handheld radios we have called LMRs to communicate to 911 and Emergency Management Council, the EMC Council, which Governor Bryan goes to for decisions, prioritization, to talk to each other. And of course, reaching out to radio stations. And radio stations are the main ways in which Governor Bryan and myself will be getting information out to the public. So developing a relationship with them. And of course, messaging, we have the AARP-VI system, which if you've not signed up for that, please go to vitema.vi.gov and sign up for that in English and Spanish or Spanish. You can get text messages, emails, and phone calls, anywhere from the earthquakes to the messages that, hurricane watches and hurricane warnings, so you can take those measures. So those are the key things we've done so far. And we'll talk about the seniors, some special stuff we've done with Commissioner Kazi Gomez, our Human Services, in preparing for this year's hurricane season.
Wow, that is really, really impressive. The amount of work and planning and preparation that's already in place. Really fantastic and very refreshing. Going back again to those generators, you said there were 8 100 kilowatt generators, 4 in St. Croix, 4 in St. Thomas, right?
Well, there's actually 10. There's 4 in St. Croix, 4 in St. Thomas, and 2 on St. John. So I always have to cover St. John also, and that goes back primarily for sheltering. But if the sheltering needs are covered, then we can look them for other purposes and where they go. And that's really, for us to make recommendations, Governor Bryan, and invite TEMA to put those out. And these are generators that are on wheels, and they have self-contained, fuel tanks in there. But of course, when they're on wheels, they have a tendency to if you don't watch them, they'll go elsewhere. So it's very important that we secure those. We know what happened to Irma Maria. One of them walked away for a little bit, not belonging to us. But that's one of the concerns that the private sector, for example, telecommunications. The government does not own any telecommunications lines. You have Via, you have Sprint, you have AT&T, you have Liberty now. So those are all the private sector we have a partnership with to make sure we prioritize their restoration activities, along with conjunction with Water Power Authority, the route restoration, as well as debris removal, to make sure we're all together on that. And that's what the Emergency Management Council does. That's what VITEMA does, is prioritize for Governor Bryan to make sure we have the right direction going forward for that.
Now, you also said that VITEMA bought a whole bunch of other smaller generators. How many of those, and what was the generating capacity? Do you know offhand?
Well, we have a couple light sets that are also generators. We have two light sets. They're about 3 to 5 kilowatt generators.
Okay.
But then FEMA has much larger, up to, I want to say, 1,000 kilowatts that they have available to us after an event that we will then, under what's called a mission assignment, once the declaration is done, then we can basically put those out. So those are the ones that we've already provided a list to them, that if we lose the power at those sites, we can put generators at, and some of them already have generators we can use elsewhere. So between FEMA having a large size generators, VITEMA sort of having those middle size 100 kilowatts, and the smaller ones really give us sort of ability to put some out to get things going. Now, not enough that you'll put it in homes. So if you are someone that has a medical condition, you're someone that you need to have fans, you need to have air conditioning, make sure you right size your generator, make sure you have safety in there, make sure you have someone check it out, the oil, how many hours you'd be run. And then the number one killer actually from a hurricane is not so much a hurricane, it's really carbon monoxide poisoning after the storms, because people are running generators in unsafe conditions. You can't run them indoors, you can't run them in apartment complexes. And that's really a safety tip, is make sure if you are having a generator, you have someone who can operate it, start it, maintain it. We don't want anybody being injured, is properly grounded. So that's a way of life. As you know, if we do lose after a category, 3, 4, or even a 2 or 5, you will have no power potentially for 3 to 5 months. That's just the way it is. Even though composite poles are there for distribution, you still have transportation or transmission and generation. It has to get back and up and operational with Water Power Authority.
And so now with global warming, what is the season going to look like? We have an infographic that you provided here. If you can maybe discuss what our season potentially looks like.
Yes, I will. And this is NOAA. NOAA puts this out at the going in a hurricane season. They'll do an update just right when we go into height of hurricane season, probably August timeframe. But this is basically a 60% confidence that we're going to have what's called an above hurricane season, and that's over the last 100 years of looking at storms. And what that means, we're going to have up to in the Atlantic, and this is not just going to impact the territory, but the big picture Atlantic, up to 20 named storms, which those 20 named storms, 10 will become hurricanes, and we'll call it category 1 or 2, smaller hurricanes. And then you'll have, of that, 3 to 5 of those become major hurricanes. And that's really, categories 3, 4, or 5. And that's really, I talk about, the impact of the territory. That's what we worry about. But it only takes one, obviously, to ruin our days. But, as the technology gets better and better, forecasting gets better, the more defined a hurricane is, the better prediction we have on the path of it. If you go back to Irma and Maria and Hugo, those were all right on track with the National Weather Service was saying. So we do see something that's going to be a major category, let's say a 3, then we'll be able to get definitely confidence that we can give you information as far as 5 days out to do the preparation for that. The ones that were more the tropical depression, the early ones, they are all over the place. The example when Dorian came through, we're like, it's only going to come to St. Croix, and all of a sudden overnight in the morning it took a shift and went over to St. Thomas and became a category 1. So those are tough ones to do. And Governor Bryan and the cabinet were like, we're going to treat all islands the same. We're not going to pick on anyone particular, because Mother Nature always has a vote. So when we put out the warnings and the watches, it's going to be, for both districts, the entire territory, to be prepared. And it may be a blue sky still, but if we open up, the shelters, we want you to make a decision. If you're going to go to shelter, and again, under COVID conditions, we have measures to make it safe, that you're able to make the decision to go there. The Red Cross will be there in order to get you safe in there. They're there for the first 72 hours. And obviously the storm will go through, and we'll make the assessment of what shelters will open up and call it secondary shelters for more of a longer term stay. If something does happen, you do lose your home itself. But the first one, the primary shelters, we have 2 on St. Croix, 2 on St. Thomas, and 2 on St. John, and 1 on Water Island, just to get you through the storm. And really, I got to talk about the boaters for a second. So I went back and I looked at the history behind Hurricane Marilyn. The deaths that we did have in Hurricane Marilyn, unfortunately, were from the boaters. Individuals trying to ride through the storm with their boats at sea. So my message to you is, if you're a boater, this time of season, especially August, take your boat out of the water, be safe. Do not try to ride it through, because that's high risk. Flooding is one thing, but the impact on the surging, on the waves, you have got to be safe. And please, if you're boaters, get safe harbor, come on land, and we'll get you set up on Water Island. There's a shelter there. And a lot of the boaters did go to Water Island from Irma and were able to safe harbor there.
Yep. In 2018, Bill number 32-0064 was signed into law in the Virgin Islands. This bill now, Act 8058, provided for the establishment of a registry for persons 60 years of age and older living alone, and persons with disabilities, regardless of age, living alone. AARP in the Virgin Islands was advocating for this measure. The act stipulates that all persons who are 60 years and older living alone and persons with disabilities living alone may enter the names on a registry with the VI Department of Human Services. In the event of a disaster, they may be contacted to determine if they need emergency assistance during a man-made or natural disaster. So can you tell us more about this registry and how you have worked with the Department of Human Services to establish it?
Yes, I'd be glad to. And then I really want to thank Commissioner Kazi Gomez and her team for really, and obviously Senator DeGraff and the 33rd legislature to make this a reality. So really, you said those individuals are living on their own, their disabilities, they're age 60 plus, to be able to make contact, and sign up for this. And I'll give you 3 phone numbers, one for St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. Going into hurricane season, we had 660 seniors sign up for this. We'd love to double that. And this is a means by which we can message you. This is really going back to the AARP-VI system, by which we can text out to your phones and well as to your smartphones, your landlines, to your homes, to make sure that you get the messages of potentially troublesome coming to you, or somewhere you can go for help and assistance after the storm, and reach out to you. So I give you 3 phone numbers. I'll go to St. Thomas, then I'll go to St. John, then I'll go to St. Croix. So this is Department of Human Services on St. Thomas. This is calling the Department of Human Services at Newt Hansen Building. The number to call is 340-774-0930, extension 4018. So again, the number for St. Thomas, 340-774-0930, extension 4018, to get signed up for the registry, for the senior registry. On St. John, it's the Department of Human Services in Cruz Bay. It's 340-776-6334. Again, for St. John, Department of Human Services in Cruz Bay, 340-776-6334. And then on St. Croix, this Richmond Senior Center, at 340-773-6630. Again, for St. Croix, Richmond Senior Center, to sign up for the senior registry, 340-773-6630. Now, the emphasis is this gets you into the registry. And of course, VITEMA, having responsibility for 911, we'll have copies of this also. But we reach out to individuals before and after the storm to let them know what can be done to help them out. Again, seniors that are over age 60, living by themselves, disability, we want you to be able to be contacted by the Department of Human Services. So that's the gist of it. We worked at a couple of tests on it last year, and this year we'll make sure we can reach out to you, and we can also find valid that you've received a message to make sure it has been received. Again, when you sign up, you can sign up in English and Spanish. You get a text messages, you get phone calls, you get email messages. We really can reach out to you to get information to you. So that's the summary of that, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about the senior registry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your work and the work that Commissioner Kazi Gomez has done at the Department of Human Services in putting this together, because as I mentioned, several years ago, 2018 to be precise, AARP advocated for it, and it was a bit of a slow implementation. But when you and Commissioner Kazi entered into your particular roles, you all made it happen, and here it is. So thank you so much for your work on it, and we encourage all people, again, over the age of 60 who are living alone, or people with disabilities, regardless of your age, who are living alone, to put your name and your contact information in this registry so that people can look out for you, so that VITEMA, so that Human Services can contact you to make sure that you're okay. Because, sometimes it's easy to be forgotten about when everybody is busy trying to manage their own affairs. Oftentimes our older people are forgotten about, and we don't want you to be forgotten. So please do take advantage of this. Now, jumping back to earlier in this conversation, Daryl, you mentioned about the models of storms, and we know that there are many models. There's a European model, there are various American models, models from all over the world as to how these storms can track. Do you have maybe just a personal opinion as to which model may be the most accurate, or what does VITEMA rely on?
Well, I rely on the National Weather Service, and they'll put out the overall predictions. They'll put the cones of uncertainty out. Obviously, the farther you get out, number of days, the more level uncertainty. But we go sort of whatever the National Weather Service predicts. We don't rely on any particular model. But the key thing to emphasize, that is who we officially go to. We don't rely on anybody else, but they constantly update that with us, and they will contact me ahead of time, especially if they're going to go put out a tropical storm watch or hurricane watch, which the first one goes out. It goes out about 48 hours prior to the event happening to sort of get prepared, and then 36 hours out they go to a warning. So those are the ones we really talk about. We really want to make sure when that information goes out, we want you to take action. It's not something to say just, oh, by the way. No, but especially when a warning goes out, it tells you that we are going to be, in that cone of uncertainty. We're going to be, something's going to happen to us. And again, Mother Nature, she may do something different, but we want you to be best prepared you can. And we open the shelters up. If we do is talk about, staying, off the roads. And when Governor Bryan puts curfews in place, the intent is curfews are for protection. We don't want you out and about when a curfew goes in place, because one of two things before the storm, we want you to be protected indoors, because, you're going to have the conditions can change very rapidly. The eye of the storm could go through. It could be calm, but then again, the second half of that storm is going to come through. You're going to have tornadoes that are also established inside those storms. And afterwards, we are trying to make assessments. We're trying to get crews on the road to do restoration. You have lines that are down, poles that are down. We really want you to let the Territorial do their job in order to get roads open as fast as we can. If it's bad enough, we are working to get patients, off the island if we have to. We have a tremendous dialysis community. Work very closely with them. If we have to evacuate them, that becomes one of our priorities. And so, anybody is on the road doing things that they shouldn't be doing, or just out, that's going to inhibit, and time's going to be against us. The first 72 hours after a storm are so precious for looking at assessments for lives and saving property, and the patients, the stabilization, that getting Governor Bryan information to make the decisions. I have, a lot of Navy assets coming in. I have a lot of Air Force assets, Army assets coming to us. We have to make room for them, because they're now going to be our first, group that's going to respond, work with fire, work with police, work with National Guard to be out to get things set up. And if I have people out and about, it's going to cause challenges. Or if you are out trying to get to a shelter when we already have the winds already up to 40 knots, 40 miles an hour, that's putting my first responders at risk. So please, make those decisions early. If it happens to be nothing, then you did that and did your good exercise. But if you chose wrong and we do have to have a storm go through, I want you to be safe and not be stuck somewhere.
Well, Daryl, thanks so much for sharing all of this important information with us. We are out of time. For those of you who are watching by Facebook, or even for those of you watching by television or listening on the radio, you can always go to AARP Virgin Islands Facebook page, looking up this show, and in our chat, we will, in the comments, we will have all of the numbers that you can call to get yourself on the senior registry, and the web address for VITEMA. So again, thanks so much, Daryl, and we look forward to having you in another show in the near future.
All right, Troy, thank you for the opportunity, everybody. Thank you. Be safe and be prepared and be vigilant.
Have a great day.